There is a task you are not doing right now, and you know exactly which one it is. It has a name. It has been sitting in the same place in your mind for days, maybe for weeks, maybe for years. The email you have not sent, the book you have not started, the body you keep meaning to build, the work that would change everything, that you keep agreeing to begin the moment things settle down, the moment you feel ready, the moment the conditions are finally right. And the conditions are never right. So you wait. And while you wait, the task does not shrink. It grows. It feeds on the waiting. Every day you do not touch it, it becomes a little heavier, a little more frightening, until the thing that once needed an hour now feels like it needs a lifetime, and you cannot even look at it without a small, cold turning in your stomach. You tell yourself you are lazy. You are not lazy. You have lain awake at 3 a.m. doing the hardest possible work, the work of imagining the task, rehearsing the task, dreading the task, dragging it behind you everywhere you go. That is not laziness. That is exhaustion of the worst kind. The exhaustion of carrying a thing you refuse to set down and refuse to begin. And the strangest part is that the doing of it, the actual doing, is almost never as heavy as the avoiding. You know this. Some rare day you finally begin, and an hour later you are standing in the wreckage of the thing you feared, wondering why you let it haunt you for a month. The task was never the monster. The waiting was the monster. The task was only a chore. You spent 30 days afraid of 1 hour of work, and the fear cost you more than the work ever could. Here is what almost no one will tell you plainly. You do not have a discipline problem with the whole task. You have a problem with one moment. The first one. There is a single instant, the very first move, the first ugly, clumsy stroke, and you will do almost anything to avoid it. You will clean your whole house to avoid it. You will plan for hours to avoid it. You will wait for a better mood, a better day, a better version of yourself who can do it cleanly and well, and that version is never coming, and the task sits there, untouched, judging you for as long as you let it. By the end of this, you will understand what is really happening in that first moment. You will know the one thing a forgotten craftsman taught his apprentice about beginning, a thing that has nothing to do with motivation and everything to do with a single deliberate act. And you will see why every great work and every wasted life is decided not in the doing, but in the first cut, the single deliberate stroke that ends the waiting. 400 years ago, in a country of cold forges and patient hands, a young man stood frozen before the same first moment you are frozen before right now. He was not stronger than you. He was not braver than you. What he was taught is the answer you have been circling your whole life without ever landing on. So hear it carefully, exactly as it was given to him. If something here begins to reach you, a quiet sign of approval helps another person who is stuck find this same fire. Tell in the comments the one task you have been avoiding the longest. Do not hide it. Naming it out loud is the first crack in the wall, and someone else needs to read your honesty tonight. And if this is the kind of truth you have been hungry for, stay close to this voice a while longer. Now, the forge. His name was Kaito, and he wanted to make a perfect sword. He had come to the old smith with that single burning hunger in him. The way you came to your own dream with a vision so bright it almost hurt. He could see the blade in his mind already, flawless, gleaming, worthy of legend. He could see it so clearly that for a long time he could not bring himself to begin, because every real strike of the hammer would be a betrayal of the perfect thing he saw behind his eyes. You know this man. You have been this man. The dream so vivid and so perfect that the first real step feels like a defilement of it. So you keep the dream pure by never beginning, and you call the keeping of it caution when it is only fear wearing a finer coat. The old smith, Goman, watched Kaito for many days. He watched the boy gather his tools and arrange them again. He watched him study the fire and test the air and find reasons. The light was not right yet. The iron was not the iron he wanted. His hands were not yet steady enough for a blade so fine. And Goman, who had forged steel for 50 winters, knew exactly what he was looking at, because he had seen it ruin more young men than bad iron ever had. One gray morning, the old man stood beside the cold anvil and said only this: "You have not made a single sword. You have made 1,000 reasons not to begin one." Kaito flushed. He had 100 answers. He was preparing. He was being careful. He wanted the first one to be worthy. And Goman let him speak, and let the silence sit, and then said the thing that turned the boy's whole life on its hinge. The perfect sword does not exist in waiting. It exists only on the far side of 1,000 imperfect ones, and not one of those 1,000 can be made until you make the first cut. The first cut. Goman picked up a raw bar of iron, ordinary and ugly, nothing like the dream, and he set it before the boy. He said, "This will not be a good sword. It will be a poor one. Strike it anyway. Make the first cut today badly, and you will have begun. Refuse it, and wait for the perfect day, and you will die with the perfect sword still glowing in your head, and not one real blade ever born from your hands. Stop here, because this is you, right now. What are you waiting to do perfectly that you have therefore never done at all? Be honest, just this once, the way you are never honest with yourself in the daylight. The dream is bright in you. You can see it finished, gleaming, exactly as it should be. And that very brightness is the chain, because the first real attempt will be clumsy. The first words will be wrong. The first effort will look nothing like the vision, and you cannot bear the distance between the two, so you protect the perfect picture by never letting reality touch it. And the years pass, and the picture stays perfect, and stays imaginary, and stays dead. That is the trap procrastination hides inside. It does not feel like avoidance. It feels like standards. It feels like care. It feels almost noble, this refusal to begin until you can begin well. But the refusal to begin badly is the refusal to begin at all, because there is no other door. Every master you have ever admired walked through 1,000 bad first attempts to get where they are. You are not waiting to be better than they were. You are waiting to skip the very thing that made them. The old smith did not let Kaito begin with the masterwork. He started him somewhere the boy found almost insulting. A nail, a simple iron nail. The kind any village smith could beat out in his sleep. Goman said, "Each morning, before you may touch anything you consider worthy, you will make one thing, quickly, plainly, without waiting to feel ready. A nail, a hook, a plain blade for cutting rope. The point is not the thing. The point is the striking. You will teach your hand to move before your mind can object." And the boy thought this was a waste of his gift. He had come to forge legends, and the old man had him hammering nails. But he had nowhere else to go, so he obeyed. And slowly, in the smallest and most ordinary acts of beginning, something in him began to shift, not because the nails were beautiful, because he stopped letting the first moment be a battle and started letting it be a habit. Hear this, because you have been waiting your whole life for the opposite to be true. You do not need a better plan. You do not need more certainty about how it will turn out. You need to make the first cut while the cut is still ugly and the outcome is still unknown. The craftsman who waits for certainty never strikes. The one who strikes badly today and again tomorrow becomes, without ever noticing the day it happened, the one whose work the others call certain. This is the difference between the person you are and the person you keep meaning to become. It is not that they had clearer visions. Your vision may be finer than theirs ever was. It is that they were willing to make it real and ugly, while you kept it perfect and imaginary. The dream in your head is not your achievement. It is your tax. Until you make the first cut, that brightness in your mind is not a gift you carry. It is a debt that grows. But the forge had a harder lesson waiting. And before I give it to you, I have to tell you about the other apprentice, because his story is the warning, and you need the warning as much as you need the rule. There was a second young man in that forge. His name was Hideo, and he had no trouble at all making the first cut. Where Kaito froze, Hideo flew. He began everything. He started a blade, and grew bored, and started another. He began a spear, then abandoned it for a knife, then left the knife half-ground to chase a new idea that had seized him in the night. His hands were always moving. His bench was a graveyard of beginnings. Every one of them dropped the moment the first thrill of starting faded into the long gray middle where the real work lives. And Goman worried about Hideo more than he worried about anyone, because Hideo had mistaken the easy part for the whole. He loved the first cut, the bright rush of beginning, the feeling of a fresh thing under the hammer. But he had never once carried a single piece through the dull, unglamorous middle to a finished end. He thought he was a man of action. He was only a man of beginnings, which is its own kind of procrastination, the kind that hides behind motion, the kind that looks like work and produces nothing. You know a Hideo. Perhaps in some season of your life, you have been a Hideo. The folder full of started projects, the first chapters of 5 books, and the last chapter of none. The new plan begun with fire every Monday and gone by Thursday. Always beginning, never finishing, and confusing the two so completely that you feel busy and ashamed at the same time and cannot understand why. Watch what the forge did to the man who could only begin. Years passed, and one by one the others around Hideo finished things. Plain things, often, imperfect things, but finished, and real, and able to be held, and sold, and used. And Hideo finished nothing, and slowly the truth he had hidden from caught up with him. He was not a beginner of great works. He was an abandoner of small ones. And there is no legend, no nail, no anything at all in this world that is made by beginning. Everything real is made by continuing, long after the thrill of the first cut has died. By the time he understood, Hideo was an old man with empty hands. He had begun more works than any man in the province, and finished not one of them. And there is no honor in that, and no legend, and nothing at all to hold. And Kaito, the one who had once been too afraid to start, was a master because he had learned both halves of the secret. Begin before you are ready, and then continue after the readiness is gone. Let that burn into you, because between these two apprentices stands every trap you have ever fallen into. On one side, the man who will not begin until it can be perfect, and so begins nothing. On the other, the man who loves only the beginning and so finishes nothing. Both are procrastination. Both are the refusal to do the dull, real, unglamorous middle of the work. And both end the same way, with empty hands and a head full of what might have been. You do not have to choose between these two failures. The rule answers both. Make the first cut now before you feel ready, like the one who froze must learn to, and then make the next cut, and the next after the feeling is gone, like the one who flits must learn to. The whole of mastery is hidden in those two simple instructions, and you have been failing at one or the other, or both, your entire life. There is one more thing Goman taught Kaito in those early years, and you have to hear it, because it is the lie that has kept you frozen longer than you know. You believe, somewhere deep down, that the first cut must be good, or it is not worth making. You think a bad beginning is worse than no beginning, that to start poorly is to fail, and that it is better to wait and protect the dream than to wound it with a clumsy first attempt. The old man sat the boy down one evening and told him the truth that breaks this lie in half. He said, "A bad sword teaches your hand. A sword never struck teaches it nothing. The poor blade you make today is not your failure. It is your tuition. Every flaw in it shows your hand where to go tomorrow. But the perfect sword you keep in your mind teaches you nothing at all, because the mind cannot learn what the hand has never tried. You are not protecting your skill by waiting. You are starving it." And then Goman said the thing that Kaito carried for the rest of his life. The first cut is never about the cut. It is about who you become the instant you make it. A man who has begun is a different man than a man who is about to begin. The whole distance between them is one strike of the hammer, and that distance is the widest distance in the world. Sit with that, because it rearranges everything you thought you knew about yourself. You have been believing that you are someone who has not yet begun, but is going to. You are not. There is no such person. There is the one who has begun and the one who has not, and between them lies not a plan, not a feeling, not a better tomorrow, but a single act you keep refusing to perform. Every hour you spend about to begin, you remain the one who has not, and the one who has not, no matter how bright his dream, builds nothing and becomes no one. And here is what Goman knew that you do not yet feel in your bones. Every first cut you make is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. Strike once badly today, and you are a person who begins. Do it 100 times, and it is no longer a thing you force yourself to do. It is a thing you are. The hand that has learned to move before the mind objects stops asking permission. You become, without noticing the day it happened, the rare and quiet kind of person who simply does the thing, while everyone around you is still waiting to feel ready. Now let me take you deeper into Kaito's story, because the rule has a second half, and almost no one is ever taught the second half. The seasons turned, and the boy grew. He could begin now without a war in his chest. He could pick up the ugly iron and make the first cut while the outcome was still unknown, and he no longer waited for a perfect morning that he knew would never arrive. He had learned the first half of the secret. Begin badly, begin now, before the mind can build its case. And he thought, the way you would think, that he had learned the whole of it. He had not. He had learned the easier half, because there is a moment in every real work that the first cut cannot save you from. It comes after the beginning, when the thrill is gone and the end is still far away, and you are deep in the long gray middle where nothing feels like progress and no one is cheering, and the work is simply hard and dull and slow. You know this middle. It is where almost everything dies. It is easy to begin a thing in the bright excitement of a new idea. It is even easy, sometimes, to finish a thing once the end is in sight and the glory is close. But the middle is where the war is truly lost, in that long stretch where you have begun but cannot yet see the end, where the first cut is far behind you and the last one is nowhere in sight, and the only thing that keeps you moving is a thing the beginning never required of you. Count the unfinished things in your own life, and you will find they did not die at the start. They died in the middle. The course you stopped halfway. The habit you held for 3 weeks and dropped in the 4th. The dream you carried up the steep first slope and abandoned on the long, flat plateau where nothing seemed to change no matter how hard you walked. The middle does not announce itself. It does not feel like a crisis. It only feels like a slow leaking of the reason you began, until one ordinary day you simply stop and tell yourself you will return to it, and never do. And in that middle, on a great blade he had labored over for months, Kaito very nearly quit. The work had stopped feeling like creation and started feeling like grinding. The vision had faded. The fire of the first cut was long, cold, and the smooth voice came to him, the same voice that once told him not to begin, now wearing a different face, telling him this one was flawed anyway, that he should set it aside and start fresh on something better, something that would feel exciting again. Watch what saved him, because it is the second half of the secret, and it is the half that builds the unbreakable kind of patience, the kind that carries a thing all the way to the end when every feeling in you wants to drop it and begin again somewhere new. He did not wait for the excitement to return. He knew now that it was not coming back, and he had stopped insulting himself by waiting for it. He did the same thing he had learned to do at the beginning, only now he did it in the middle. He made the next cut, not a grand one, just the next small, ordinary stroke that the work in front of him required. And then the next. He stopped asking whether he felt like continuing, the way he had once stopped asking whether he felt ready to begin. He learned the deepest truth of the craft. You do not finish a great work by loving it. You finish it by making the next cut when you do not love it at all. Let that settle all the way down, because it names every project you have ever abandoned. You did not abandon them because they were bad. Many of them were good. You abandoned them in the middle, when the first thrill was gone and the end was not yet near, and a fresh idea came along wearing all the excitement your tired project had lost. You mistook the death of the feeling for the death of the work. They are not the same. The feeling always dies in the middle. The work is finished by those who keep cutting after it does. The master is not the one who feels passionate all the way through. No one feels passionate all the way through. The master is the one who makes the next cut in the gray middle when the passion is gone. The same way the beginner must learn to make the first cut before the passion arrives. The whole of it, beginning to end, is the same single act repeated. Move the hand before the feeling, or after the feeling, but never wait upon the feeling. The feeling was never the point. The next cut is the only point there has ever been. This is why every past attempt of yours has died where it died. The ones that never started died at the first cut, frozen by a perfection you were protecting. The ones that started and stopped died in the middle, abandoned when the excitement drained out. Both were killed by the same enemy, the belief that you must feel a certain way before you may move your hand. You never needed to feel ready. You never needed to feel inspired. You needed only to make the next cut, whatever it was, however small, however ugly, and then the one after that. And here is the part that should sober you and then set you free. The resistance never fully disappears. Not for Kaito, not for Goman, not for the oldest, most weathered masters with a lifetime of finished blades behind them. The voice that says wait, that says not yet, that says this one is flawed, begin again, it never dies. It only grows quieter and easier to ignore the more times you refuse to obey it. Mastery is not a place you arrive where beginning is finally easy. It is a thing you choose every single day, in the small space before the first cut, in the small space before the next one. So stop waiting to become the kind of person who finishes what they start. There is no such finished person waiting at the end of the road, complete and effortless, the resistance behind them. There is only this. The next cut made now, before the case against it can be built. Make it enough times, at the beginning and in the long gray middle, and people will call you disciplined and dedicated, and they will be wrong about why. They will think you were given a love for the work that they lack. You will know the truth. You simply stopped waiting for the love to arrive before you picked up the hammer. Now let me take you to the day everything Kaito had learned was tested in fire, because everything I have told you is about to be proven, and so, sooner than you think, will it be proven in you. A lord came to the forge with a commission and a deadline that could not be moved. A blade was needed, and it was needed by a certain dawn, and there was no time at all for waiting on the perfect day or the perfect mood. There was only the iron and the fire and the cold demand of a thing that had to be made now, complete, in the time that there was, whether Kaito felt ready or not. And in that pressure, the master did not freeze, and he did not flit. He made the first cut at once, ugly and unhesitating, because his hand had been trained across 10,000 mornings to move before the mind could object. And then, through the long gray middle of that desperate work, when the excitement burned off and the body ached and the end seemed impossibly far, he made the next cut, and the next, because his hand had also been trained to continue when continuing felt like nothing at all. He finished the blade by the appointed dawn, not because inspiration came to rescue him. Inspiration does not keep appointments. He finished it because every nail he had once resented hammering, every poor blade he had made and learned from, every grinding hour in the middle of every forgotten piece, had carved a single law so deep into his hands that on the one morning his name and his life depended on it. The law simply ran. Begin without waiting. Continue without feeling. Cut and cut and cut again until the thing is done. Understand what this means for you, because it is the whole reason the small, unglamorous discipline is worth more than any grand inspiration you are waiting for. The tiny task you begin today badly before you feel ready is not small. It only looks small. It is a rehearsal. You are not merely starting a thing or grinding through a thing. You are teaching your hand a single total law, that when there is work to be done, it moves, regardless of the weather inside you. And one day, on a day you cannot see coming, your whole life will turn on whether that law was written into you, or whether you were still standing at the edge of the work, waiting to feel ready, watching the dawn arrive and the chance pass. So let me leave the forge now, and the master, and the boy who once could not strike a single blow. Let me speak only to you because the story was never the point. You were always the point. You and the task you are avoiding, and the first cut that ends the avoiding. Here is what to do, and I want you to feel how small it is, because the smallness of it is the whole reason it works, and the reason you have ignored it for so long. Right now, Before you go any further, choose the task. The one you have been carrying and not beginning. The real one, the one that turned cold in your stomach when you started reading this. Do not choose 10, choose 1. And then make it absurdly small, so small that the first cut is something you could do in the next 5 minutes, not the whole book. The first ugly sentence, not the transformed body. The shoes on and out the door, not the finished work. The single first stroke, made badly, made now. And then make the first cut, today. Before the mind can build its case, before you can wait for a better hour or a cleaner mood or a more worthy version of yourself who is never going to come. Strike the iron while it is still ugly and the outcome is still unknown. You will not do it well. You were not trying to do it well. You are trying to become, in a single act, a person who has begun. And then tomorrow and the day after, in the long gray middle where the first thrill is already gone, you will make the next cut. Not because you feel like it. The feeling left, the way it always leaves. You will make the next cut because that is what the work in front of you needs, and because you have finally understood that the feeling was never the engine. The next cut is the engine. The next cut is the only engine there has ever been. And you will find this rule everywhere because the first moment is everywhere. It is in the message you have been meaning to send for a week. Make the first cut and write the first line now. It is in the work you keep circling and never entering. Make the first cut and open the file now. It is in the conversation you have been dreading for a month. Make the first cut and say the first hard sentence now. It is in the long project sagging in its middle, begging you to abandon it for something fresh. Make the next cut and grind one more hour now. Every one of these is the same moment. Every one of these is crossed the same way. You are not learning 100 disciplines. You are learning one act and bringing it to 100 doors. You will begin some things badly. Hear me clearly. You will. The first blade is always a poor one. The first cut is always ugly. The boy in the forge made 1,000 bad things on his way to making one good one, and not one of those bad things was a failure, because each of them moved his hand a little closer to the truth. You do not need the first cut to be good. You were never asked for that. You need only to make it, and then to make the next, returning to the work each day without drama and without despair, long after the feeling that started it has gone. And slowly, in acts so small you will be almost ashamed to call them victories, something will begin to change in the deepest part of you. The frozen moment will thaw. The dread will quiet. The distance between the person who is about to begin and the person who has begun will close, cut by cut, day by day, until one morning you will pick up the hard thing without a war, and you will not even remember when it became easy, because it will not have become easy in a single day. It will have become easy the way every real and lasting thing does, not in a blaze of inspiration, in 1,000 small, ugly first cuts made before you felt ready, and 1,000 next cuts made after the feeling was gone. Imagine yourself 1 year from tonight, not transformed in a flash, not made into someone you are not, just a person who for 1 year kept making the first cut and then the next. Picture the work that piled up into something finished and real, one unwaited for stroke at a time. Picture the calm of it, the quiet weight you would carry into every room, because somewhere underneath it all you would finally know that when there is a thing to begin, you begin it, and when there is a thing to finish, you stay until it is done. That person is not a fantasy. He is not waiting on better luck, or a cleaner mood, or a more perfect version of the dream. He is on the far side of a single act, made badly at first, then better, then without thinking. He is one first cut away, repeated for a year. And the only thing standing between you and him is the task you choose to strike, or keep circling, starting in the next 5 minutes. That is the secret the old smith carved into his apprentice, the secret that beats the thing you have been losing to your whole life. Procrastination was never about the size of the task. It was about the size of the first moment, the one you keep refusing to enter. Make the first cut before you feel ready. Make the next cut after the feeling is gone. That is the whole of it. There is a task you are not doing right now, and you know exactly which one it is. The only question left is the one you have been avoiding your entire life. How long will you stand before the iron with the perfect imaginary sword still glowing in your head, refusing to begin the real and ugly one? One cut. That is the whole of the distance between the person you are tonight and the person you have promised yourself so many times that you would finally become. Pick up the hammer.